it's set up right now, and I'd like, when everyone gets a chance to look at it and see what's there, the way it's set up right now, we're getting pretty aggressive on residential because the plan and the intent of this ordinance was to move this out of the neighborhoods and into the facilities, so people can go get their medicine.
Do you honestly think somebody that's growing it in their basement, that's not paying rent, is going to say, you know what, I'm going to move it out of my basement and go rent a facility? I'm not saying I'm against this, but I mean, the reality of it, I guess my biggest concern is if we can't, you're saying that we can't register our growers and then we can't inspect them?
No. What I'm saying is that with regard to this ordinance, we have made it, if you are a caregiver and you are growing and providing for a patient, there's a limit to a number of plants and you got to register with the city.
Right.
Now, whether or not they do or not, that's a different enforcement thing, because we find things all the time. Even forgetting about medical marijuana, I mean, we go to a property and there's an addition on the back.
Well, even
and
if
they
they're
pull a
growing
permit.
it in their basement, our police officers should have the right to go in there, because it's still against the law. I mean, they should have the right to go in there and make sure that they're doing it correctly,
Yeah.
It's federal law.
Yeah.
It's against federal law, but you do have constitutional issues. I mean, if there is evidence of a crime inactive, I mean, there are search warrant type issues for the police. But generally what happens is, for example, if our police department goes on a domestic run, so they're there for something else, and all of a sudden there's a closet with marijuana or something there. Person produces a card, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, less than 12. That's generally kind of what happens in practice. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think your question is something that I want to ask Dave, if you could just dive into a little bit, the difference in terms of the quantity, because there's a, I don't know what the term is, but there's a license that allows you to grow up to 12 plants, and then there's a different license currently under the current law.
Yeah,
Some can grow up to, 72.
Sure. Under the current law, if you are a patient, you can possess up to 12 marijuana plants.
Right.
If you are a caregiver, you can possess up to 12 plants per patient, and you're allowed to have up to 5 patients, and then you are allowed to be a user to have 12 of your own personal. So that's 72 plants, which is a lot of plants to have in a residential, 1,200 square foot ranch in a basement. It's way too much. So that's part of the things that we're trying to address here with respect to trying to move it out of the neighborhoods. And I don't know, to answer Councilman Woolley, if the person would personally move and go rent a space, but I think the idea would be is that, if it's easier if I'm a patient and I'm not a grower, if I could just go to the dispensary and buy it, I don't need to go to that house or that residential area, or it doesn't make any sense anymore.
So is there a difference between a caregiver and a business? Like,
Yes.
as a caregiver, you can grow 72 plants, but if I open a business, how many plants can I grow?
The grower licenses under the state law are class A, B, and C. And that's up to 500, 1,000, and 1,500 plants. So we're talking definitely about an industrial type of agricultural grow facility.
Is that stated in here?
Yeah.
Okay.
With regard to,
I kind of briefed it, but we got it real.
with regard to the licenses, under this ordinance, the licenses that are approved for potential in the city of Taylor are dispensary, grower licenses per category, like an A, B, C, as long as they find per category. I think we put in there 2 per category. 2 dispensaries, 2 processors, and then the labs. Now, the labs are probably, and this is one thing that we talked about as far as high-tech businesses in the city of Taylor, the labs are probably, for marijuana testing that are used right now, are laboratories that do other work other than marijuana. So that would be the idea, to potentially bring in high-tech that would, marijuana would be a part of the business.
So you stack them. So if you're a grower, you have a facility, can you also have the dispensary? Can that be under your name? Can you do it in the same building? You have the grow operation in the back, you get it tested, and then you've got the dispensary in the front.
The mix of what you can own and not own together is set forth in the statute. And it's like, for example, I don't believe that you can own a safety compliance facility if you are a grower or a provisioning center, right? Because it would be testing your own product.
Right,
Okay?
right. I
Now, with
understand
respect, now I believe you can still have a processor and a grower can be stacked.
And then,
With regard to a dispensary and a grower, I don't know off the top of my head, but I can answer that question because it's set forth very, you know, very on what you can and what you can't go. Yeah, you can stack some of them and some you can't. I don't think you can stack anything with a lab.
no.
That grow operation we went to, how many plants were they growing, do you know?
72.
They only had 72?
They only had 72.
Okay, so they weren't a business, they were just a
No,
caregiver.
they are a business. What started here in the city of Taylor is, and in most municipalities, is trying to figure out how to deal with medical marijuana. So prior to the Medical Marijuana Facilities Act, there are several municipalities in the state of Michigan that decided to commercialize medical marijuana under certain requirements and restrictions under the old law, okay? So what they would do is set up, like, let's say, for example, the city of Ypsilanti was allowing, I mean, at the time they passed their original ordinance, nobody even knew what well, they knew what a lab was, but there was no idea about secure transporter, because like I said, there was no explanation on how it would turn up anywhere. But what these municipalities did is they said, all right, we're the type of community, we're next to Ann Arbor, it's already decriminalized since 1971 out there. People in our municipality want this, people in the state of Michigan want this, so they passed a specific ordinance allowing dispensaries, now they call provisioning centers, and grow operations. Now, the problem that these municipalities and these businesses had is that they needed to remain compliant with the Michigan Medical Marijuana Act, and they would come up with interesting ways to do that. Like, for example, if you were a grow facility, like the grow facility we toured the other day, they only grew 72 plants. We talked to the business person that was there. They do 3 harvests a year, and they have 2 rooms, one with 36 plants of the 0 to 5 weeks, and then the other room with 36 plants of the 36 to 72 weeks. And I'm going to show you guys a picture in a few minutes of that. And so even though so a lot of what was done before was a local municipality deciding what they're going to tolerate and or enforce. All right, so specifically talking with the police chief in Ypsilanti, who's been there for 5 years, knew nothing about medical marijuana before he got out there. He said, look, when I became chief out here, I'd never been in a place with medical marijuana. This city council that we have in Ypsilanti, they wanted this. This is what they set up, so this is what I'm enforced to do, okay, because I'm the local police officer. So he goes in there, and they count the plants of 72. So being in the room, that person who ran that, quote, business was only, he had his cards and everything ready to show anybody from law enforcement, including the state police if they wanted to go there, that they were still compliant with the Medical Marijuana Act. Now, what's even more, I'll say, unique was the dispensaries, right? Because we think of a business, you've got a product and you want as many clients coming in to buy your product. Now, the way these dispensaries were set up was not like that. What they would do is they would end up creating a mechanism for caregivers to show up to meet up with patients, okay? So it wasn't like a storefront like you would see in Amsterdam, I suppose. I've never been there, but right, everyone knows it's legal in Amsterdam and they have all the shops there. So what you would do is you would go there, you'd say, I'm a medical marijuana card user, and let's say you just went up to one of these dispensaries and they said, all right, do you have a caregiver? Do you have a way to get marijuana? And the person would say no. They say, all right, great. We have a caregiver named Cindy Bauer. She's only got 4 patients. You know, she's only got 4 patients. You know, she has an opening. And Cindy is here. And Cindy is here on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 2 and 4. And what you would do is you would go there and they would meet in a back room, do the transaction, and that was it. So these dispensaries were not really operating like a regular business. I'm not sure how they were making money. Between the the grow operation and the dispensary, I'm sure there's a lot of looking the other way on what's going on with this. So rather than fooling around with these 72 and caregivers and dispensaries and being a caregiver there and doing all these things, the legislature passed an act now legalizing these businesses so they can be legitimate and real operating businesses without trying to, you know, really,
So when we talk about the provisioning centers that we're gonna allow, they're gonna be selling different products there in that center, correct?
yeah, marijuana and probably, you know, paraphernalia type